I froze in the hallway when I heard my daughter-in-law giggle and say, "Don't worry, babe. Once we dump the old hag at the nursing home next month, this entire estate is finally ours to sell." She thought I was deaf or senile, but she didn't know I had just rewritten my will that very morning. Hit that subscribe button right now if you think ungrateful children deserve a massive reality check. My knees were popping like firecrackers as I scrubbed the grout in the master bathroom. My master bathroom, technically, though I hadn't been allowed to use it in 2 years. I'm Beatrice, I'm 72 years old, and in the house my late husband built with his own 2 hands, I had been demoted to an unpaid maid. It wasn't always like this. When my son, Brian, asked to move in with his new wife, Jessica, after my husband passed, he sold it to me as a comfort. "We'll take care of you, Mom," he'd said. "You won't have to lift a finger." That was the biggest lie since the devil said the apple tasted like candy. Jessica was sitting on the patio, probably filming one of those "Get Ready With Me" videos for her 300 followers on TikTok. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and limped into the kitchen to start dinner. It was 4 p.m., and if dinner wasn't on the table by 6 sharp, Jessica would get hangry and claim my cooking was triggering her migraines. I was chopping onions when she breezed in, smelling like expensive vanilla perfume and entitlement. She didn't even look at me. She just tapped her long acrylic nails on the granite island, the one I paid for in 1998. "Beatrice," she said, not even calling me Mom or Mrs. Vance anymore. Just Beatrice, like I was a temp worker she hired off Craigslist. "We need to talk about the schedule. Brian and I are hosting the Summer Solstice Influencer Bash here next weekend. It's going to be huge. I need the entire downstairs deep cleaned, the silver polished, and you need to prep appetizers for about 60 people. I put the knife down, my hands trembling slightly. 60 people? Jessica, nobody asked me. This is my house. I'm not feeling up to hosting a crowd that size, especially with my arthritis acting up." She finally looked up from her phone, rolling her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Stop being so dramatic. You love cooking. Besides, it's basically our house anyway. You know Brian handles all the bills now." He handled the bills with my pension money that I deposited into the joint account, but I bit my tongue. "I can't do it, Jessica. I'm tired. You'll have to hire a caterer and a cleaning crew." She let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "A caterer? Do you know how much that costs? We are saving for our future. You need to pull your weight, Beatrice. You live here rent-free while we do all the hard work." I stared at her, dumbfounded. Rent-free? In a mortgage-free house I owned? Before I could respond, the front door opened and Brian walked in. He looked exhausted, his tie loosened, but the moment he saw Jessica, he put on that pathetic puppy dog smile he always wore around her. "Brian," I said, stepping forward, "your wife just told me I have to cook and clean for 60 people next weekend. You know my back can't take that." Brian sighed, dropping his keys on the counter. He didn't look at me. He looked at Jessica, who was already pouting, forcing tears into her eyes. "Babe, she's being difficult again. I'm just trying to build our network and she's refusing to help. It's so toxic." "Mom, come on," Brian said, rubbing his temples. "Just do this one thing for her. It makes her happy. Why do you always have to start a fight the second I walk in the door?" "I'm not starting a fight. I'm setting a boundary," I insisted. "Well, set it somewhere else," Brian snapped, his voice raising. "We're tired of the complaining. If you can't contribute to this household, maybe we need to rethink the living arrangements." The room went silent. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Rethink the living arrangements. I knew exactly what that meant. I turned back to the onions so they wouldn't see the tears springing to my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of pure, white-hot rage. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll make the appetizers." Jessica smirked, a little victorious curl of her lip. Great. Oh, and on the day of the party, we're going to need you to stay in your room or maybe go visit a friend. It's not really a geriatric vibe. We don't want to kill the mood. I didn't say another word. I finished making their dinner, served it to them like the good little servant they thought I was, and then retreated to my small bedroom downstairs. But I didn't go to sleep. My mind was racing. Rethink the living arrangements. The phrase kept replaying in my head. Around midnight, I got up to get a glass of water. As I passed the living room, I heard hushed voices. They were still up, drinking wine on the couch. I stopped in the shadows of the hallway. I can't take her anymore, Brian. She's haunting this place. It smells like old people. I know, babe, I know. I already called the Golden Sunset facility today. They have a bed opening on the 1st of the month. We just have to get her to sign the power of attorney papers this week. We'll tell her it's for tax purposes. And then we can sell? Jessica asked, her voice greedy. And then we sell, Brian confirmed. The market is hot. We can get $1 million for this place, put her in the state-funded wing, and pocket the rest for that condo in Miami you wanted. I stood there in the dark, clutching my chest. My own son. He wasn't just spineless. He was a thief. They were planning to trick me, dump me in a state home, and steal my legacy to buy a condo in Miami? A cold calm washed over me, replacing the shock. They wanted a party. Oh, I was going to give them a party. They wanted to sell the house? Good luck selling a war zone. I tiptoed back to my room, pulled out my old heavy laptop from under the bed, and opened a new document. The time for being the sweet, accommodating mother was over. Beatrice the servant had just quit, and Beatrice the Avenger was just clocking in. The next morning, the house smelled like burnt toast and deception. I walked into the kitchen, my cane clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floors, pretending I hadn't heard a word of their treasonous conversation the night before. Brian was chugging coffee like his life depended on it, his eyes darting around nervously while Jessica was scrolling through her phone, probably deleting negative comments on her latest post. "Good morning, family," I chirped, making my voice sound as frail and wavering as possible. I needed them to think I was losing my grip on reality. If they thought I was sharp, they'd be on guard. If they thought I was a confused old lady, they'd get sloppy. "Morning," Brian grunted, not looking up. He slid a thick manila envelope across the counter toward me. It looked innocent enough, but I knew it was a loaded gun pointed straight at my freedom. "Hey, Mom, before you get started on the appetizers, I need you to sign these. It's just some updated tax forms for the house. The county's being a pain in the neck again, and we need to verify your occupancy." "Tax forms?" I asked, feigning confusion as I picked up the envelope. My hands shook, not from age, but from the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "I thought we did this last year, Brian." "Regulations change, Beatrice," Jessica snapped, finally looking up. She was wearing a silk robe that I knew cost more than my monthly Social Security check. "Just sign it so Brian doesn't get fined. We don't have time for 20 questions today." I pulled the papers out. Even without my reading glasses, I could see the header, Durable Power of Attorney. It wasn't a tax form. It was a complete surrender of my rights. It would give Brian the legal authority to sell my house, access my bank accounts, and yes, check me into a facility against my will. The audacity was breathtaking. "Oh dear," I squinted, holding the paper upside down on purpose. "The print is so small. My eyes are really struggling today. I think I need to take this to my room and find my strong reading glasses. I'll bring it back down later." Brian exchanged a look with Jessica, a mix of annoyance and relief. "Fine, Mom. Just don't lose it. It needs to be postmarked by tomorrow." "I won't, I promise. I'll take care of it." I took the envelope and shuffled back to my room, locking the door behind me. I didn't look for glasses. Instead, I grabbed my purse and climbed out the window. Luckily, my room was on the ground floor, and the landscaping bushes were thick enough to hide my escape. I called an Uber from around the corner. Yes, I know how to use Uber. I'm old, not dead, and headed straight to the one place Brian didn't know about. Mr. Henderson's law office was a dusty little building downtown, smelling of old paper and peppermint. He had been my late husband's attorney for 40 years. When I slapped the tax forms on his desk, his bushy gray eyebrows shot up into his hairline. Beatrice, this isn't for taxes, Henderson grumbled, adjusting his spectacles. This gives your son the power to liquidate everything you own. If you sign this, you're effectively handing him the keys to your life. I know, I said, my voice steady. He wants to sell my house and put me in a state home. They're planning to use the money to buy a condo in Miami. Henderson's face turned red. That little weasel. I never liked him. What do you want to do? We can file a restraining order, revoke his access? No, I cut in. That's too easy. If I stop him now, he'll just try something else later. I want to teach them a lesson they will never forget. I want to make sure that when they fall, they hit the ground hard. We spent the next 2 hours drafting a new legal strategy. First, we created an irrevocable trust and moved the deed of the house into it immediately. This meant that even if Brian got power of attorney later, the house wasn't mine to sell anymore. It belonged to the trust. Second, I updated my will. Instead of leaving everything to Brian, I left 100% of my assets to the local cat sanctuary. I'm allergic to cats, but the look on Jessica's face when she finds out will be worth the hives. Finally, Henderson handed me a decky document. It looked exactly like the power of attorney Brian gave me, but it was legally gibberish, a dummy contract that had no binding power in court, but looked official enough to fool a greedy son and his airhead wife. You're a dangerous woman, Beatrice, Henderson chuckled as I left. I made them this way. When I snuck back into the house 3 hours later, entering through the back patio door, the chaos had already begun. The summer solstice influencer bash was in full preparation mode. Jessica had hired a team of movers to clear out my living room furniture because it wasn't aesthetic enough. My vintage floral sofa, which I had saved for 2 years to buy, was sitting on the damp grass outside. Beatrice, she shrieked when she saw me. Where have you been? The florists are here and someone needs to show them where to set up the pampas grass arch. And please tell me you signed the papers. I reached into my purse and pulled out the fake document, signed with a flourish. Right here, dear. I signed it right after I found my glasses. Brian practically teleported to my side, snatching the papers from my hand. He scanned the signature, his eyes lighting up with greed. Thanks, Mom. You really saved us a headache. Anything for family, I said sweetly. Now, what do you need me to do for the party? Just stay out of the way mostly, Jessica said, waving her hand dismissively. But first, I need you to scrub the guest toilet. One of the influencers coming has 2 million followers, and I don't want her seeing your old lady hair on the floor. I smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile. Of course, Jessica. I'll make sure everything is spotless. I walked toward the bathroom, but I didn't grab the cleaning supplies. Instead, I went to the garage and found the box of laxatives I used for my occasional constipation. I also found the bottle of industrial-strength food dye I used for crafts. Jessica wanted me to make appetizers. Fine. I was going to make appetizers that would leave a lasting impression. As I worked in the kitchen that afternoon, chopping shrimp and mixing dips, I listened to them in the living room. They were already celebrating. We did it, babe, Brian whispered. As soon as the nursing home van comes on Monday, we list the house. I already called the realtor. I'm already looking at furniture for the Miami place, Jessica giggled. No more old lady smell. Finally. I stirred the spicy shrimp dip, adding a generous, crushed-up handful of the special ingredients. Monday was going to be a very interesting day, but Saturday night was going to be explosive. They wanted a viral moment for their social media. I was about to give them content that would break the internet, just not in the way they hoped. The influencer bash was about to turn into a disaster, and I had a front row seat. The bass from the DJ booth, which was actually just my dining room table covered in a sequin cloth, was thumping so hard I could feel my dentures vibrating. The summer solstice influencer bash had officially begun, and my house looked like a carnival exploded inside a Sephora. There were ring lights in every corner, streamers blocking the hallway, and about 60 20-somethings squeezing into my living room, holding champagne flutes and shouting "Yas" at their phone screens. Jessica had insisted I wear a black dress with a white apron. She claimed it was chic catering attire, but I knew she just wanted to visually demote me from mother-in-law to the help. I stood by the kitchen island, holding a silver tray filled with my special shrimp dip on crostini. The industrial strength food dye I'd added gave the sauce a vibrant, trendy purple hue. I told Jessica it was acai-infused seafood, and she ate it up, literally and figuratively. "Everyone listen up," Jessica shouted into a microphone, standing on the very floral sofa she had thrown onto the lawn just hours before. Apparently, they dragged it back in for ironic seating. "Make sure you tag me in your stories. The Wi-Fi password is Jess and Brian Takeover. And try the purple appetizers. They are to die for." I watched as a swarm of influencers descended on the tray. I saw the girl with the pink hair, who I recognized from YouTube, a guy who was famous for pranking his grandma, and Jessica's best frenemy, Chloe. They were shoveling the laxative-laced shrimp into their mouths like it was the last meal on earth. "Excuse me," a young man with a man bun snapped his fingers in my face. "Refill, now!" "Of course, sir," I said, bowing my head slightly. "Would you like some extra sauce on that? It's very cleansing." "Whatever, just bring it." He rolled his eyes and turned back to his live stream. "Yo, guys, we are live at the sickest party of the year." Brian was in the corner holding a beer and trying to look cool while talking to a guy who looked like he sold crypto scams. I walked over to him, offering the tray. "Mom, stop hovering," he hissed out of the side of his mouth. "You're embarrassing me. Just put the tray down and go to your room." "I just wanted to make sure your guests were fed, Brian," I said innocently. "Jessica said the food was the most important part." "Yeah, well, they're eating it. Now go." He dismissed me with a wave of his hand. I retreated to the hallway shadows, checking my watch. The brand of laxatives I used was Rapid Relief. The box promised results in 30 to 60 minutes. It had been exactly 45 minutes since the first wave of guests started eating. The first sign of trouble was subtle. The music was still blasting, but the energy in the room shifted. A girl in a neon green bodycon suit suddenly stopped dancing mid-twerk. She clutched her stomach, her eyes widening in confusion. She looked around, sweat instantly beading on her forehead. "Where's the bathroom?" she asked loudly, cutting through the noise. "Down the hall, first door on the left," she shouted cheerfully, still filming herself opening a bottle of champagne. The girl sprinted, but she wasn't the only one. Moments later, the guy with the man bun dropped his phone. His face went from tan to a sickly shade of gray. "Bro, I don't feel so good." "Lightweight," Brian laughed, slapping him on the back. But the slap seemed to dislodge something vital in the poor boy's digestive system. He let out a low, guttural moan and shoved Brian aside, rushing toward the hallway. The problem, which Jessica and Brian had failed to calculate, was that my house was built in the 1950s. It had one bathroom downstairs and one ensuite in the master bedroom, upstairs. The upstairs was strictly VIP only, meaning Jessica and Brian locked it. That meant 60 people, about 40 of whom had just consumed a nuclear dose of laxatives, were fighting for one single toilet. Chaos erupted. "Move! I was here first," someone screamed from the hallway. "I'm gonna be sick. Is there another bathroom? Seriously? Is there a bucket?" The music seemed to mock the situation as the beat dropped.
Jessica finally noticed the commotion. She lowered her phone, her smile faltering. Guys, what's going on? You're ruining the vibe. Then it hit her. I saw the moment the cramps seized her. She dropped the champagne bottle. It shattered on the hardwood, but she didn't care. She clutched her midsection, her face twisting into a mask of pure panic. Brian, my stomach! Brian, who had eaten about 10 of the shrimp costini himself, was already leaning against the wall, breathing heavily. Me too, he groaned. What the hell is happening? It's the food, Chloe screamed, pointing an accusing finger at the empty tray. The purple stuff. It's poison. Pandemonium broke out. Influencers were pushing and shoving, abandoning their ring lights and tripods to get to the front door or the bathroom. But the rapid relief was living up to its name. It was rapid. Let's just say not everyone made it. I stood in the kitchen doorway, sipping the cup of herbal tea I had brewed for myself, watching my son and his wife panic. Mom, Brian yelled, spotting me, what did you put in that dip? Just the spices Jessica bought, dear. I lied, my voice steady. Maybe rich food doesn't agree with your delicate influencer stomachs. I told you you should eat more fiber. I need the upstairs bathroom, Jessica screamed, realizing the line for the downstairs one was 10 people deep and getting violent. She scrambled toward the stairs, but her high heels slipped on the spilled champagne. She went down hard, sliding into a puddle of bubbly wine and broken glass. She wasn't hurt, but her dignity was shattered. She lay there, gasping, her expensive dress soaked, while 3 people stepped over her to run up the stairs to the locked master bath. The door's locked, someone yelled from the landing. Kick it down. No, don't break the door, Brian shouted, trying to run up after them, but he had to stop and squeeze his legs together, his face turning a deep crimson. It was a symphony of disaster. The smell was starting to permeate the living room, a mix of expensive perfume, stale beer, and regret. People were fleeing the house, live streaming their misery as they ran to their cars. Worst party ever, I heard a girl sobbing into her phone. Don't ever come to the Vance house, it's cursed. I walked over to Jessica, who was trying to pull herself up using the banister. I offered her a hand, but she swatted it away. Get away from me, you old witch, she spat. Suit yourself, I said calmly. I'm going to my room. It seems like you kids have a big cleanup ahead of you. I wouldn't want to get in the way of your networking. I went into my room and locked the door, jamming a chair under the handle just in case. I put on my noise-canceling headphones, a gift from my late husband, and laid down. I could still feel the vibrations of feet thumping upstairs and the slamming of doors, but I slept like a baby. They thought this was the worst of it. They thought a ruined party and a few stained carpets were the extent of my revenge. They had no idea that Monday morning was coming. The physical purge was over, but the financial purge was just beginning. When the sun rose, they would be cleaning up vomit, but in 48 hours, they would be cleaning out their lockers. The sold sign they imagined in the front yard was about to be replaced by a rude awakening.
The silence in the house on Sunday morning was heavy, broken only by the aggressive whirring of a carpet cleaner Brian had rented at dawn. The summer solstice influencer bash had turned into the summer solstice sewage crisis, and the smell lingered like a bad memory. I stayed in my room until noon, reading a mystery novel and eating a stash of granola bars I kept in my nightstand. When I finally emerged, the scene was pathetic. Brian was on his hands and knees, scrubbing a stain on the rug that looked suspiciously like spilled red wine mixed with shame. Jessica was slumped on the sofa, the only piece of furniture that had survived relatively unscathed, scrolling through her phone with frantic thumbs. She looked haggard. Her makeup was smeared and her hair was in a messy bun that wasn't a style choice. Don't say a word, Brian warned without looking up. Not one word, Mom. I wouldn't dream of it, I said, pouring myself a glass of water. I just hope you learn that hosting is a big responsibility. We're ruined, Jessica wailed, throwing her phone onto the cushion. Look at the comments. Poison party, Vance vomit fest, #diarrhea decor. I've lost 2,000 followers overnight, and Chloe posted a video of me falling in the champagne. It has 1 million views. There's no such thing as bad publicity, I offered helpfully. Shut up, Beatrice, she shrieked. This is all your fault. The food was contaminated. I know you did something. Me? I gasped, clutching my chest. I ate the leftovers for lunch and I feel fine. Maybe it was that cheap champagne you bought. Brian stood up, wiping sweat from his brow. It doesn't matter now. We just need to get this place clean. The realtor is coming tomorrow at 10 a.m. to take the listing photos. We can't have the house smelling like a porta potty. Right. Jessica sat up, her eyes narrowing. Tomorrow, the beginning of the end. Once the for sale sign is up, we can get the advance on the equity and leave this dump. And you, she pointed a manicured finger at me, will be packed and ready for the Golden Sunset van at 9 a.m. sharp. No excuses. Oh, I'm already packed. I've been ready for a long time. Monday morning arrived with a gray, ominous sky. At 8:45 a.m., a white van with Golden Sunset Senior Living printed on the side pulled into the driveway. 2 sturdy-looking orderlies in blue scrubs got out. Brian and Jessica were practically giddy. They had their suitcases by the door, ready to head to a hotel while the house was being shown. This is it, Mom, Brian said, trying to sound sympathetic but failing miserably. It's for your own good. You need professional care. I understand, Brian, I said. I picked up my small suitcase and my purse. I just have one last thing to do before I go. What? Make it quick. Jessica checked her watch. The realtor is almost here. I need to give you the keys. I reached into my purse, but instead of keys, I pulled out a thick, legal-sized envelope. And this. Brian frowned. What is this? Read it, I said, my voice dropping the frail act entirely. I stood up straighter, my posture correcting itself as the burden of playing the victim fell away. Brian tore open the envelope. As he read the first page, his face went pale, then red, then a color I didn't know existed on the human spectrum. What is this? He stammered. Irrevocable trust? What is the Beatrice Vance Cat Sanctuary Trust? It means, I said, smiling, that the house doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to the trust. And since I am the sole trustee, I decide who lives here. And guess what? I've decided to turn it into a shelter for stray cats. You're joking, Jessica laughed nervously, snatching the paper from him. She's senile. This isn't legal. We have power of attorney. Read the date, sweetie, I pointed. I signed the trust documents on Friday morning. The power of attorney you have, I signed that Friday afternoon. And if you look closely at the one I gave you... Brian scrambled to his briefcase on the hall table and ripped out the document I had signed with the tax forms. He squinted at it. This is nonsense, he whispered. The clauses. Party of the first part agrees to dance the Macarena. The undersigned acknowledges she is the Queen of Sheba. Mr. Henderson has a weird sense of humor, I shrugged. But the point is, it's garbage. You have no power, you have no house, and you have no money. No money? Jessica screeched. We have the joint account. Oh, right, I tapped my chin. I closed that this morning. Online banking is a marvel, isn't it? I transferred my pension and my savings to a new account. The balance in the joint account is currently, let me check, 0. You evil old... Brian lunged toward me, but the 2 orderlies from the van stepped in. I had paid them $50 each to escort me safely, but they looked more like bouncers now.
I wouldn't do that, Brian, I warned. Assaulting an elder is a felony, and you're going to need a clean record to find a job since you won't be living off my retirement anymore. Just then, a sleek black car pulled up behind the golden sunset van. A woman in a sharp blazer stepped out, the realtor. "Hi, I'm here for the Vance listing," she called out cheerfully, walking up the driveway. "Is the house ready for photos?" I walked past my stunned son and his gaping wife to the front door. "Actually," I called out to the realtor, "there's been a change of plans. The house isn't for sale, but these two," I gestured to Brian and Jessica, "are looking for a new place to live, preferably something cheap, maybe a cardboard box under the overpass." Jessica let out a scream of pure frustration that sounded like a tea kettle exploding. Brian just slid down the wall, sitting on the floor with his head in his hands. "Get out," I said, my voice ice cold. "Get your bags, get your influencers, and get out of my house. You have 1 hour before I call the police for trespassing." "You can't do this," Jessica sobbed. "We have nowhere to go. We have debt. The party costs $5,000. "Put it on your credit card," I said, closing the door in their faces. "Oh, wait, I canceled those two as the primary account holder. Good luck." I locked the deadbolt. The sound of the lock clicking into place was the sweetest music I had ever heard. But I wasn't done. The financial ruin was just the appetizer. The main course was about to be served, and it involved the one thing Jessica valued more than money, her reputation.
Watching my son and his wife have a meltdown on my front lawn through the blinds was better than any soap opera I'd ever watched in 40 years. Ryan was kicking my hydrangeas like a toddler who dropped his ice cream, and Jessica was screaming into her phone, presumably calling her lawyer or her mommy. The golden sunset van had peeled out of the driveway 5 minutes ago, the drivers realizing they weren't getting paid and certainly weren't dragging a lucid, angry old woman anywhere. I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee and sat in my favorite armchair by the window. I had given them an hour, but their hour was up. I picked up the landline. Yes, I still have one, and it works perfectly when the power goes out, and dialed the non-emergency police line. "Hello, Officer Miller. This is Beatrice Vance on Elm Street," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm. "Yes, I have 2 trespassers on my property who are refusing to leave. They are becoming aggressive and destroying my landscaping." "Yes, I'll wait." While I waited for the law to arrive, I pulled up my laptop. I saw that Jessica had gone live on Instagram. She was sitting on the curb, her mascara running down her cheeks in calculated streaks, looking like a tragic heroine in a Lifetime movie. The viewer count was climbing. People love a train wreck. "Guys," she sobbed into the camera, holding the phone with a shaky hand, "I can't believe I'm sharing this, but we're homeless. My mother-in-law, she just snapped. She has dementia and she got violent. She kicked us out without warning. We have nowhere to go. Please, if anyone can help with a GoFundMe." The comments were flooding in with sympathy. "Oh no, poor Jess. Elderly people can be so dangerous. Donates $50. I took a sip of my coffee. "Oh, honey," I whispered to the screen, "you really shouldn't have done that." What Jessica didn't know was that 3 months ago, when I first suspected they were stealing from me, I had installed hidden cameras. Not just the Ring doorbell they knew about, but tiny, motion-activated cameras in the kitchen and living room. I had hours of footage. I had the receipts, as the kids say. I opened a new TikTok account I had created days ago under the handle @GrandmaB_spills_the_tea. I had already edited a nice little compilation video. I titled it, "The Real Reason They're Homeless." I hit post. The video started with the clip from part 1. Clear as day. Jessica's voice rang out. "Once we dump the old hag at the nursing home next month, this entire estate is finally ours to sell."
Cut to the next clip. Jessica laughing while looking at her phone. My followers are such idiots. They'll buy anything I link. I just need to fake a crying video to get the engagement up. Cut to Brian. We'll tell her the power of attorney is for taxes. She's too old to know the difference. And the finale? Jessica screaming at me during the party disaster. Get away from me, you old witch! I hope you rot! I sat back and refreshed the page. The internet moves fast, but the internet's rage moves faster. Within 10 minutes, the video had 1,000 views, then 10,000, then it hit the For You page. Outside, the dynamic shifted. I saw Jessica look down at her phone. Her sobbing stopped abruptly. She started tapping furiously, her mascara running down her cheeks in calculated streaks, looking like a tragic heroine in a Lifetime movie. The viewer count was climbing. People love a train wreck. Guys, she sobbed into the camera, holding the phone with a shaky hand. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but we're homeless. My mother-in-law, she just snapped. She has dementia and she got violent. She kicked us out without warning. We have nowhere to go. Please, if anyone can help with the GoFundMe. The comments were flooding in with sympathy. Oh no, poor Jess. Elderly people can be so dangerous. Donates $50. I took a sip of my coffee. Oh, honey, I whispered to the screen. You really shouldn't have done that. What Jessica didn't know was that 3 months ago, when I first suspected they were stealing from me, I had installed hidden cameras. Not just the Ring doorbell they knew about, but tiny motion-activated cameras in the kitchen and living room. I had hours of footage. I had the receipts, as the kids say. I opened a new TikTok account I had created days ago under the handle @GrandmaBSpillsTheTea. I had already edited a nice little compilation video. I titled it, The Real Reason They're Homeless. I hit post. The video started with the clip from part 1. Clear as day. Jessica's voice rang out. Once we dump the old hag at the nursing home next month, this entire estate is finally ours to sell. Cut to the next clip. Jessica laughing while looking at her phone. My followers are such idiots. They'll buy anything I link. I just need to fake a crying video to get the engagement up. Cut to Brian. We'll tell her the power of attorney is for taxes. She's too old to know the difference. And the finale? Jessica screaming at me during the party disaster. Get away from me, you old witch. I hope you rot. I sat back and refreshed the page. The internet moves fast, but the internet's rage moves faster. Within 10 minutes, the video had 1,000 views, then 10,000, then it hit the For You page. Outside, the dynamic shifted. I saw Jessica look down at her phone. Her sobbing stopped abruptly. She started tapping furiously, her mascara running down her cheeks in calculated streaks, looking like a tragic heroine in a Lifetime movie. The viewer count was climbing. People love a train wreck. Guys, she sobbed into the camera, holding the phone with a shaky hand. I can't believe I'm sharing this, but we're homeless. My mother-in-law, she just snapped. She has dementia and she got violent. She kicked us out without warning. We have nowhere to go. Please, if anyone can help with a GoFundMe. The comments were flooding in with sympathy. Oh no, poor Jess. Elderly people can be so dangerous. Donates $50. I took a sip of my coffee. Oh, honey, I whispered to the screen. You really shouldn't have done that. What Jessica didn't know was that 3 months ago, when I first suspected they were stealing from me, I had installed hidden cameras. Not just the Ring doorbell they knew about, but tiny, motion-activated cameras in the kitchen and living room. I had hours of footage. I had the receipts, as the kids say. I opened a new TikTok account I had created days ago under the handle @GrandmaBSpillsTheTea. I had already edited a nice little compilation video. I titled it The Real Reason They're Homeless. I hit post. The video started with the clip from part 1, clear as day.
The first week of my new life was a blur of Claritin, cleaning crews, and pure, unadulterated schadenfreude. The Beatrice Vance Cat Sanctuary was officially open for business. I wasn't joking about the trust. On Tuesday morning, a local rescue group dropped off 12 of the scruffiest, loudest, most ragtag felines I had ever seen. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Vance?" the volunteer asked, holding a one-eyed tabby named Pirate. "You mentioned you have allergies." "I have a prescription and a purpose," I replied, taking the cat. "Besides, I hired a lovely veterinary student named Sarah to live in the guest room, formerly Jessica's content studio, to manage the litter boxes. I just want to hear the pitter-patter of little feet that aren't waiting for me to die." My house, once a cold monument to my son's greed, was now alive. Sure, I sneezed occasionally, but every time I saw a cat scratching the expensive leather sofa Jessica had bought with my money, I felt a warm glow in my heart. But the real entertainment wasn't the cats, it was the news cycle. Brian's downfall was spectacular. The emails I forwarded to his boss weren't just creative accounting, they were evidence of a felony. Turns out my son had been skimming off the top of construction contracts for 2 years to fund Jessica's lifestyle. He was arrested on Wednesday. I didn't bail him out. I heard through the grapevine, Mr. Henderson, my lawyer, that he was using a public defender. The man who wanted to put me in a state-funded nursing home was now relying on the state to keep him out of prison. The irony was delicious. Jessica, on the other hand, had become a pariah. The internet is a cruel place, and she was its new main character. The hashtag #GrandmaBStrikesBack was trending for 3 days straight. People were dissecting her old videos, pointing out every lie, every filter, every stolen design. She tried to pivot to an apology tour, posting a video with no makeup and a sad hoodie. But the comments were savage. She was canceled, in the truest sense of the word. Brands dropped her faster than she had dropped her college friends. A month later, I decided to hold an estate sale. I didn't need all the junk they had accumulated. I hired a company to auction off Jessica's designer bags, Brian's golf clubs, the massive flat-screen TVs, and the ridiculous modern art sculptures Jessica claimed were investments. The driveway was packed. People came from 3 towns over, not just for the deals, but for the gossip. "Is this the Gucci bag she bought with the stolen money?" a woman asked, holding up a purse. "It sure is," I said, sipping my iced tea on the porch. $50 and it's yours." Bad karma included for free. I made $15,000 that weekend. I donated half to the cat rescue and used the other half to book a cruise to the Mediterranean. First class. 6 months passed. The house was peaceful. Sarah, the vet student, was a delight. She actually did the dishes and asked me how my day was. I was healthy, my stress levels were down, and my bank account was secure. But I needed one last bit of closure. I was driving through the gritty part of town on my way to the mechanic when I decided to stop for a burger. There was a rundown diner called Patty's Pit Stop that I hadn't been to in years. I walked in, the bell on the door jingling. The place smelled of grease and despair. I sat at a booth and waited. A waitress in a stained yellow uniform walked over, her head down, scribbling on a notepad. "Welcome to Patty's. What can I get you?" Her voice trailed off. She looked up. It was Jessica. But not the Jessica I knew. The blonde extensions were gone, replaced with limp, dark roots. Her acrylic nails were removed, leaving her hands looking raw. She looked 10 years older. There was no ring light, no filter, just the harsh, fluorescent buzz of reality. She froze, her pen hovering over the pad. Her eyes widened in horror. "Beatrice," she whispered. "It's Mrs. Vance to you," I said cheerfully, opening the menu. "I hear the onion rings are greasy, but I'm feeling adventurous." You ruined my life," she hissed, tears forming in her eyes. "Brian is in jail because of you. I'm living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates. I have nothing." "You have a job?" I pointed out, "which is more than you had when you were leeching off of me. And Brian is in jail because he stole. You're here because you're nasty. Don't confuse consequences with persecution, dear." She trembled, looking like she wanted to throw the coffee pot at me, but she knew better. She needed this job. "Are you going to order?" she choked out. "Actually, no." I closed the menu. "I just wanted to see if the rumors were true. I'm glad to see you're finally learning the value of hard work. It builds character. Maybe in 20 years, you'll be a decent person." I stood up, smoothed my skirt, and placed a $20 bill on the table. "Here, a tip. For old time's sake, buy yourself some humility." I walked out of the diner, the bell jingling behind me, leaving her staring at the money. I got into my car, checked my phone, and saw a text from Sarah. "Pirate caught a mouse. Also, I made lasagna for dinner." I smiled, started the engine, and drove home. My home. The locks were changed, the will was sealed, and the toxic trash had been taken out for good. They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but I disagree. Revenge is a dish best served with a side of freedom and a house full of cats. The end.